Hey everybody, I'm Doug Keeling, and today we're going to create a text effect inspired by a delicious classic board game. When I was a kid, I'd see this game and I just thought that the font that they used in the logo was probably the coolest thing, so let's hop into Illustrator and see if we can create something similar. Before we go any further, if you like these tutorials and you want to see more of them, click the subscribe button so you'll be in the loop when I release new ones. Okay, so I've got a document set up here with an artboard that is 5,000 pixels square, and if you go up under Preferences and down to Guides and Grid, you'll see that I have a grid line every 100 pixels and 10 subdivisions. Now you could do a much smaller document size. In fact, you could go a factor of 10 below this, so you could have a 500 pixel wide document with a grid line every 10 pixels and 10 subdivisions, and that would be fine. Basically, as long as your grid lines are set up as a factor of 10, you should be able to follow along here pretty easily. And also, if you go under View, make sure that Snap to Grid is selected, and then we'll turn on our grid by pressing Command or Control apostrophe or single quote, whatever you want to call that. And so in order to create this effect, we're basically going to be creating our own font, really. And to do that, we're going to have to create a pattern brush. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is, just watch and I'll show you how it works. It's easier than trying to explain it. So let's get started trying to create this candy striped pattern. Alright, so let's just go up to the top someplace on the top corner, and let's go ahead and create kind of a square that our pattern is going to reside in. So I'm going to click on this first layer, layer 1 here. I'm going to make sure that my stroke is set to black, and then I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and draw a box that is 600 pixels square. Now again, there's a grid line every 100 pixels, so if you count 6 of these boxes, these major boxes here, you're going to have 600 pixels. And now I'm going to toggle the lock there so that I can't edit that one. I just want that in there for reference. Grab another rectangle, make sure that you are on the next layer above that, or if you don't have one, go ahead and create one. And then I'm going to just zoom in a little bit more. Center that, and then draw a rectangle that is now 600 pixels wide by 200 pixels tall. And I've got some color swatches, and so I'm just going to grab the eyedropper tool, pressing I, and select this pinkish, magenta-ish, whatever you want to call that color. Press V, and then click anywhere else on the artboard to deselect that. Grab your eyedropper tool and select the red over there. And then we're going to just zoom in here and start to draw the candy stripe pattern on top of this bar. So switch over to your pen tool by pressing P, and what you're going to do is go to the middle of this pattern here, so about this grid line right here. You're going to click and drag rather, to reveal the handles that go along with the anchor point. And you're going to drag that handle from the center all the way over to the next major grid line. And then you're going to go down to the bottom right, click and drag to the right, and you get, again, that handle that extends out. Now what I'm doing here right now is holding down the Alt or Option button, and that changes the pen tool to the Convert Anchor Point tool, and that lets you move these handles freely and independently of one another. So hold down Alt and drag this particular handle on the right so that it stays inside the pattern, and make sure that it's only that it's very short. You don't need it to be long, so I'm just going to keep it right at the very next grid line. It snaps right to it, and I'm going to release that. And then let go of Alt and continue drawing your pattern. So go over 50% of the way here, right underneath your first anchor point. Click and drag to the left. It'll give you that handle again. Go up to the top left. And then connect these points all together to form one cohesive shape. The next thing you're going to do is copy this shape and basically duplicate that. So press Command or Control C and then Command or Control F to paste in front. Now it doesn't look like anything changed, so let's go ahead and change our foreground color here of this shape to white. And if I just move this, you'll see that yes, the red shape is still behind that. Now let's double click inside here, and I'm going to switch to the direct selection tool by pressing A, and that lets you select individual anchor points. So by holding down Shift, I selected one, held Shift and selected the other, and then I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard and use my arrow keys to move these anchor points all the way over to the far side. So right there they actually match up basically perfectly, and from that point, let me just zoom in a little bit more here. I want to move these back. Let's go 1, 2, 3. And that is going to be the size of our white stripe. And there's only one minor issue here, and that is this little part of the anchor point handles that is actually extending outside the pattern, and that's going to mess up what we're going to do next. So with that direct selection tool, click on that and switch to actually your convert anchor point tool by pressing down Shift C. That gets that handle back, and I'm just going to drag that back so that it's both of these anchor points for these 2 points are in that white area. And let me just select this one and make sure that that's still the case. Yeah, it looks like both the anchor points are inside on this side, so that's good. Then zoom out, switch to your move tool by pressing V and click outside of that. So now what I'm going to do is just create some copies of this white stripe. So again, Command C, Command F, and I'm going to just move these over with my arrow keys and the Shift key. And that's a pretty good distance right there. Command C to copy, Command F to paste in front. And I like that. Those 3 stripes are good. So from there, I'm going to group these together. So hold down Shift and select all of those and press Command G to group those. Now I'm going to just move them a little bit here, but what I want to do is essentially make sure that these white stripes are right in the middle of the red stripe. So I've got that group selected. I also want to select the red stripe, and I'm actually going to click on the red stripe twice, and you'll see that we get this heavy outline here. And that means that we have chosen that as our key item that we want to align other things to. And so if you go up here to these alignment tools and click horizontal align center, it'll snap these white lines right in the center of the red one because it is the key item. So there we go. That's all the more we need to do for our main pattern, but we also need an end cap. So we've got the text that's going to be rounded on all the edges. So we basically have to create duplicates of this particular pattern right here. So in order to do that, I'm going to just untoggle that lock button. I'm going to then select everything, and that selects both this square box and the pattern itself. And I'm just going to hold the Alt or Option key and drag over. And again, since we're snapping to the grid, we should be able to stay perfectly on those grid lines there. So I got it where I wanted it, and that looks good. I'm going to toggle the lock on that bottom layer again. And now we need to cap this end right here. So what we're going to do is grab our rectangle tool, and then we're going to draw another rectangle over top of this one. We're going to just change our foreground color to black or something that we can see easily. And then with your direct selection tool, press A, and then you see that you have these curve radius controls right here in the center. So if I click on one and hold Shift and click on another one right here on this side and then drag inward, I'm going to get a nice solid smooth curve that's basically a semicircle on that side, and that's exactly what I want. Alright, I'm going to move that up just a little bit so that I can see what's underneath it, and then I'm going to select all of these items and make sure that they're grouped by pressing Command G. Move this masked area back down. This is the shape that we want. Then selecting them both, I'm going to go down here to crop in the Pathfinder, and now we have our right end. So we need to create this for the other side as well, and to do that, all we really need to do is copy this and flip it around. And there we have our 3 patterns that are going to make up this pattern brush. So what we're going to do is toggle this lock on this background here that has these squares in it. And we're just going to make sure that they don't have any stroke or fill. They're going to just basically be invisible. Now, with those strokes gone on that, let's just select each one of these patterns. And you can see it's got that square box behind it. We want that, but we don't want it to actually do anything, so that's why it's transparent. And from there, we're just going to drag into the swatches panel, and then select the next one. Drag into the swatches, and select the last one, and drag it into the swatches as well. At this point, you're pretty much done with these items, but you can leave them up there for future editing if you want to do something else with them. So now let's go ahead and create our brush. If you go into the brushes palette, and if you don't see it, go up to Window, down to Brushes, and select New Brush. Over here you're going to choose a pattern brush and click OK. And it gives you some options here that you can choose from, and basically what you're going to do is choose from the patterns that are available to you in this document. So it found a couple of them here. So let's go ahead and choose this one, and you can see which part of the brush and how the pattern is going to relate to the brush. You can see each of those right here. So this is telling us that this is a straight piece. Any straight piece on the line is going to use this particular brush. So you have to choose which one. So we want the one that doesn't have any rounded edges. Choose that, and you can see down here in the preview that those tile right next to one another. And then we want to choose the ends. So go over to this one here, and I always get these wrong. You got to make sure you choose the right one here. There we go. And then choose the end for this one up here. There we go. So that looks right. And then as far as the outer corners and the inner corners, you have your choice. Now Illustrator does a pretty good job of modifying the brush to work however you want it to. You can either you can choose this auto sliced, which sometimes works, auto centered, or auto between. I think for both of these I'm going to choose auto between. So for this corner, let's choose that auto between as well. We've got our brush. Let's click OK, and it shows up in the brushes palette. So let's go ahead and start actually creating our font here. And before I get started, I want to create kind of a guide so I know sort of an average height that I want my letters and overall font to be. Untoggle the visibility. Let's make this lower layer visible again and zoom in. And I'm going to just click on the rectangle tool, just click on the center, and I'm going to make a rectangle here. I'm just going to dictate how big I want it to be. I want it to be 5,000 pixels wide, the full length of the document, and I want it to be 900 pixels tall. Click OK. And that looks good. We've got a border on it so we can see what's going on. Now I'm going to turn off that visibility just so we have that kind of guide for our height like I was saying. So let's start by drawing a C. So the easiest way for me to do that is probably to start off with a ellipse tool here. Let's just zoom in. And because the pattern is 200 pixels tall, when we actually drew it, I'm not actually going to draw this oval going from the actual top and bottom. I'm going to go a little shorter than that. So let's go right in here, and that looks pretty good. Maybe extend it out a little further. We'll see how it looks. I think we'll just leave it right there at about 500 by 700 pixels. And then we're going to select this pattern brush over here. That gives us a nice idea of how this is all going to look once it's fully created. But for now, let me just undo that. I just wanted to give you a preview there. Grab your pen tool, and we're going to actually make this a C. So let's grab and put an anchor point here at just a couple locations, wherever you think the C shape should end. I'm going to put one right there and right there. And then I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, press A, and I'm going to delete this anchor point right here. So that's the shape of our C. And then we're going to apply this pattern brush again. And right there, that gives us a pretty nice C. That looks good. I like that. So let's move on to our A. We're going to grab our rectangle tool, and let's start drawing this again. And sometimes you don't get right on those grid lines, so depends on how worried you are about actually doing that, but I'm going to make sure that I'm pretty close on those. That looks good. Now I've got this line, because this is a full rectangle, I don't want this line down here, so switch back to your direct selection tool by pressing A, and I'm just going to draw right around there. You can't see it, but that bottom face is selected. I'm going to hit delete, that gets rid of it. And then I'm going to grab these inner curve handles here and drag those so that we have a full curve. And then again, select our pattern brush, and that's the shape of our A. Now, I think we need to actually extend this out a little further. I think that's looking a little too narrow based on if you were actually kind of looking at the game. And you can choose what size you want to do this. You can either drag it or you can modify the width and height of it up here. Let's go ahead and we'll try 500 pixels wide. And I think that is actually okay. I think that'll be okay right there. Then we're going to grab a line segment tool, and we're going to just draw a straight line right here across the middle. You can see kind of the center point of this shape. So we'll just create a new one. So at this point, it's really a matter of just drawing out each letter. So I'm going to fast forward and I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the one thing that I'll point out real quickly is that if you have a letter that is, or a shape rather, that is too short, like in this case here, if you reference this with regard to the pattern we created, this line segment is not long enough to have any middle sections to it. So in order for this line segment here to have this pattern, if it was any shorter, it's basically going to smush the start and the end together in order to kind of make this all work. And that's not ideal. So there are a couple ways around that. You might need to actually create a separate brush, or you might need to adjust the stroke weight. So if I go up here and I take this from 1 point down to 0.9 point, you'll see that it does change that a little bit. And if you take it down even further drastically to like half a point, you'll see that now there's enough room for it to fit in an additional middle part of that pattern. But obviously that doesn't fit, you know, with the style of this. So some of these things, you know, the pattern brush might not always be 100% effective, but I think we can get pretty close on most of this. Alright, once you have your text exactly how you want it, then you can go ahead and enhance this further by applying some styling to it. So I'm just going to select all of this here, and I'm going to press Command C and Command F to paste that in place. And then I'm going to group that together too really quickly by pressing Command G. Once that is grouped, I'm going to go up to Object and Expand Appearance. And what that does is it takes all of those lines and turns them, you know, into the outlines of the complete shape. Now, if I select a foreground color here of black, you'll see that we have the outline of this. And what we actually want to do is apply a graphic style to it. Now, I've already created it over here, but it's this square right up here in the top. And all that is applied to that is, if we look at the under appearance, you'll see that we have the opacity turned down to 90%. We have the blend mode set to multiply, and we have an inner glow that's 60 pixels from the edge, and it has this purplish color here that is what is actually being applied. So, like I said, all you have to do to create a graphic style is just select any object and then go into graphic styles and hit new, and it'll create one from that. So I've already got this created, so all I have to do is go over here and select these. I'm going to well, actually, before I ungroup them, I'm going to change the color to white. Now I'm going to ungroup them, and I'm going to click on this graphic style, and it'll take a second to process this. As it applies to each one of those, you can see that now it gives a lot more depth and definition to each one of these. Now, we have some issues we have to solve, but we're very close and we're a lot further along on our way. So if we zoom in here, you can see what's happening. We've got two overlays that are over top of the bar here of the A, and so what we need to do is actually move some of these things out of the way and change the layer order of them. So if I move the overlay down, you'll see what that looks like, and I can now access this bar behind it, and I need to bring that to the front, so I'm going to press Command Shift and right bracket. That brings it to the front. Now I'm going to click on this overlay and do the same thing, Command Shift, right bracket, bring it to the front. And there you go. You're a lot closer. The only thing that's left now is to add some highlights around various places here to actually add some shine to it. And there are a lot of different ways that you could do this. If you want to do it freehand, you can do that just by using, a brush tool. I'm going to create a couple of small custom brushes that I can apply in various areas around here. And so I'm just going to create the brushes and go around and add these highlights, and you'll see what the process is. And you can do it on your own if you want to take it to that level. Alright, there's our final effect, all shiny and delicious. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button for more tutorials in the future. You can download the Illustrator file that goes along with this tutorial from my website, dougkeeling.com, and the file also includes a full set of uppercase letters. Also, you can find me on Instagram @DougKeeling and other social networks in the links below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.